Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is our map week, and that means we get to dive into a little more detail on our subject for the week. Well, I won't take up any of Victoria's time. I'll turn it right over to her. Victoria?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad to have you here on this really, really cold day on the Cala Ranch. I think the temperature is like 1. So, hey, at least we made it above 0. Woohoo! But what better thing to do than to hang out in the library with you guys? So let's dive right in. In the compass, I described 2 different kinds of story writing. The reason I want to take you back to fiction theory is because I've gotten a lot of questions about different kinds of story. So number 1, I'm writing about that in the Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers book, which I should finish this month. So happy times there. But you're getting a sneak preview. Let's look at those 2 things. The first kind of story is conflict driven. It's what you consider the standard Western narrative. We are hardwired to see the person in their normal state. They get challenged by some big dramatic conflict. Things blow up, crazy. Person has to go through trials and challenges, climax, person wins, and end of the story, right? We all know that story by heart. So let's break that down just a little bit in terms of the story that you might want to write. In the beginning, you have a couple of alternatives that you can choose from. You need to have some kind of catalyst if you're writing a conflict story. Now, does that mean you need to have bombs blowing up and dead bodies everywhere? No. Your catalyst can be something internal, and I'm not going to say too much about that because that is Kathleen's territory, and she's going to talk to you about that pinnacle trait that's out of reach. That, my friends, could be a great challenge or conflict. So keep a pin in that as she's talking later. But whatever that catalyst or that conflict is, that challenge, you've got 2 options there. Think of it this way. That challenge could be something causal, right? It could be something that the character has done in the past that has then resulted in this challenge. Or it could be something that just happens in their life. They walk out the door of their office and bingo, they run into this person and that causes this conflict, right? That's something that is a causation that happens. Or what if it's something random? You could use that same scenario. They walk out the door, they run into a random person. That doesn't create a conflict, but then maybe something else happened that does. That's just a random accident, okay? So you've got 2 options there. You've got something with causality, something that they made happen, and then you've got something random that just shows up. Those stories have very different feelings if you think them through. And that's my challenge to you for this week, is to think each of these stories through and then go with the one in your gut. Go with the one that you feel, I can write that and this is going to be fun. Because the secret, my friends, is if the story idea feels fun, it feels energizing and exciting, that's the story you need to write. Not the story that you've carefully plotted and planned and milked out every little detail, and maybe it's feeling a little stale. There's a reason for that, because you've planned the fun out of it. Your writer brain needs a little bit of fun. So even when you're writing in well-plotted, conflict or challenge-driven story, even if you've chosen a random thing to make the story kick off, you still need to be having fun and feel that energy as the story develops. So after that initial catalyst, whether it's causal or random, they're going to experience some challenges and they're going to have to work through those challenges. Have fun with that process. Play around with those character traits that Kathleen's going to talk you through. Come up with different ways, not only externally to challenge your main character, but internally by toggling those character traits around. Kathleen's going to talk to you about that pinnacle trait that's up above, floating around that they can't reach. That can be great fun for writing because your reader doesn't know what's going to happen. And sometimes you don't know what's going to happen either until you put it on the page and you wonder, where did that come from? That's when you're in writer heaven, because you're having fun with the process and you're letting it evolve. As you work them through these series of crises and challenges and trying to figure things out and get their bearings, eventually you're going to bring that to a climax. That's why it's called a conflict-driven story. Those challenges get them to the point where they either win, they die trying, or they lose. Again, that climax is something you get to choose. And you can use the character traits to inform how that plays out. So again, keep those character traits in the back of your mind as you're deciding, when my character reaches this climax, how are they going to handle it? Are those traits going to flip and they're going to have a perspective or an emotion change? Maybe they change as a person and come out of the experience completely different. And then you show them living in that new world as a different person. Or maybe they lose. Maybe this story, you just feel it in your gut. I need to beat this character down until they are left in the dirt, and it's a classic tragedy. That's okay too. Make those decisions as you're going through that writing process, because that's when it's fun for the reader, and that's when it's fun to be along for the ride as a writer, because sometimes these characters do crazy things you never saw coming. Finally, you reach your conclusion. That's what I like to call the settlement. You've set up the offering, you've delivered the goods in the milestones and the discoveries that your characters have made through that process, and then you give your reader that settlement. You land it at the end of the story. That's when you answer your questions. So as you think through this first module of the conflict or the challenge-driven story, think about what's exciting for you. Think about, what do you want to do with that character? How do you want to push them to grow with both their conflicts and challenges and with how they grow as a character? And then where do you want to leave that story? Is it going to be a happily ever after and the character dives into their new world with a smile and a new attitude? Or is it going to be a tragedy and they land in more of a quiet, downturn fashion? It's all up to you. Next week, we'll talk about the counterpoint to this, and next episode, and we'll look at what it looks like to not have a challenge-driven story. But for today, I want you to think through, what does that look like for you? And what story do you want to tell? With that, I will throw it back over to Kathleen to talk to you about some of those pesky character traits.
Oh boy, thank you so much, Victoria. Wow, what a powerhouse. And we're going to talk about how character traits change and shift, because with the Pinnacle trait, we are going to have the next to the last character trait position, and one of the most important character trait positions for your conflict-driven story that Victoria has just been talking to you about. Because if you set up your story appropriately, you can get enormous value out of your Pinnacle traits. Here's all you have to do. It's a little bit of a formula, but we're going to talk about how that happens. First of all, let's review what we mean when we say a character trait is in the Pinnacle position. That means that it's just out of sight, out of mind for your character. It's a value out there, but your character has no idea how to reach it, doesn't know he's not reaching it, doesn't even know it's a thing, and is paying no attention to it whatsoever in his life. Now, if you've got someone who's missing an important element of life and it's totally over their head, everybody else notices. You can't miss seeing it. It's like a red blinking light. Okay, let me take a simple case. Somebody who has orderliness, very, very ordinary character trait. I always grab orderliness when I want a really boring trait, because if I can show you that the most boring trait on planet Earth is actually kind of exciting, then you're going to understand that when we get to the exciting character traits, they're just filled with excitement. So let's take good old boring orderliness. Tell me you don't know someone who has orderliness in the Pinnacle position. Maybe it's a professor of yours. You walk into the office for office hours and you look around and he said, "Come in." You know there's a person in there. Oh, there he is on the other side of that pile of books. He invites you to walk around the desk, but you can't hardly get there because there's not really much of a path. There's papers piled on the floor. There's, and then you understand, well, now I know why his lectures are so crazy. I was having such a hard time outlining his lectures. They're just flying at me all over the place. This guy has orderliness in the Pinnacle position. So we can do this for every character trait that we know. We can construct a scenario and bring to mind a character who has that character trait in the Pinnacle position. So now that we understand greatly what the Pinnacle position is, let's compare that with two others that are very important positions for story. Next to the pinnacle position, where the character doesn't even know it's an important thing, we have the wing, which is the chaos level. What's different about pinnacle and wing? Well, in the wing character position, the character kind of knows that he's deficient in that thing, and it's kind of naggy. It would be the office, you just to carry on our analogy of orderliness and college professors, you walk into the office of this character, and while you see several very neat piles on one counter and piles of mess on another, and his lectures start out organized, and then he wanders all over from topic to topic after getting a good start. And you discover that this character, he just nags himself with, I need to be orderly. And he makes fits and starts, but he never really gets anywhere with it. The wing position, the character is aware of it, but doesn't know how to get a hold of it. And then in the rudder position, the decision position, oh, this is an opportunity spot for the character. He can choose to be orderly or not. Now it's like, okay, today's the day. I don't have any classes this afternoon. And look, I've only got one appointment on my calendar. I can make some serious inroads now into this mess on the top of my desk and get it straightened out. And then he has to choose to do it or not, because now he's in the free position where he can. Well, you're probably not going to build your story around orderliness. But if you think about a dramatic moment at the conclusion of your story, we're going to think drama and ending first. What's the big impact that you want to make for your story? The big battle that your character is going to undergo to finally obtain victory. What character trait is that battle going to require? Now, if you want to have a story that just writes itself, take that character trait and put it in the pinnacle position at the start of your story. Your character doesn't even have that any sense of whatever that is. Maybe it's a milquetoast character and he is just timid as timid becomes. He has no courage whatsoever at all. Doesn't even occur to him to have courage. He just winces when anyone even talks to him. And suddenly at the end, while he's going to have to stand strong against a corporate Goliath who's poisoning the small town by polluting their water supply. And he's going to go from this timid milquetoast to being the one who stands up and makes the impassioned speech that gets through to the city council and reminds them that they better turn down those bribes because there's people's lives are at stake. How did he get from your pinnacle position to the rudder position where he has to get up his courage and decide he's going to do it? It has to make a transition through to the wing. And then you have to understand, how do character traits move? Most characters, you give them your character profile and that's where they are the whole time. Most of your secondary characters are going to be like that. All of your bit characters are going to be like that. The character trait just doesn't move. And it's just kind of a truism. You want to know how somebody's going to behave next week? Well, how did they behave last week? Stability is the norm. But in story, it's that change and that evolution that gives drama to the story. So then you need to know what pushes a character trait from one to the next. And here's a top secret that I'm going to share with you that will make your story writing work effortlessly. If you want to move a character trait from the pinnacle position to the rudder position, it's got to move through the wing. If you want to get a character trait to move from the pinnacle to the wing, you have to find a character trait that is currently in the wing that closely relates to the pinnacle. You have to just find it. Step one, find it. Well, that character trait has to go from the wing to the rudder. How's it going to go from the wing to the rudder? You have another job. Find a character trait that's currently in the rudder that relates to the one in the wing. Now you've got to work on your character. Give him circumstances. Give him challenges that he can actually make decisions on because it's in the rudder and he's in control, and show him routinely, repeatedly, or dramatically in one big dramatic instant, firmly push that character trait into the anchor position. That one that we talked about where it just holds you down, it's stable, that one is locked in. Because when you push that down into the anchor position, the trait that's in the wing, boom, pops into the rudder. It just pulls it right in. A closely related character trait to the one that goes into the anchor will be pulled from the wing into the rudder. And your reader will believe it. It will understand it because that's what happens. And in the process and in the movement from wing to rudder, that pinnacle trait will pop into the wing. Then how will you show your reader that that trait has reached the wing position? What you're going to do is you're going to show him start to have glimpses of awareness, start to have glimpses of, well, darn, that isn't right. I'm seeing something that I don't like, but do I have courage enough to speak? See, he doesn't have the courage yet. He's starting to understand that courage is important. Whereas before, it was like somebody even talked to him and it was like, who, me, huh? It wouldn't even have occurred to him. And now it's kind of nagging him, but I'm the only one who can prove it. Now what? You see, now you've got it in the wing. So your story will just write itself and will be a very, very satisfying story to your reader. But we couldn't do any of that until we understood this character trait, the pinnacle position. Our next time, we're going to talk about the base position, which often, sadly, is the same thing in reverse for a tragedy. But we're not going to go there today. Today, we're going to be heroic, and we're going to go from pinnacle clear to the rudder. And then, of course, he's going to make the right choice and give your readers something big to cheer about. All right, so now I'm going to let Victoria sum us up.
Holy cow, guys. I truly hope that our dear viewers understand the tremendous gift of understanding the character traits. Because if you were paying attention, and I highly encourage you to go back and watch this discussion a second time with this one thing in mind, character arc. We will talk about that in February because our second session this month, as I said before, is going to be on non-conflict. But when we get to February, we're going to talk about creating a believable character arc and what that looks like. And let me tell you, friends, what Kathleen has just described for you in terms of having a pinnacle trait and how it moves and governs behavior, and peppering in the other traits that inform that movement, that, guys, is a character arc. That is exactly how you break it down and write it. So trust me when I say, if you've struggled, have we got some treats for you? Because we're going to continue to break these things down, theory on my side and character practice on Kathleen's side. And we're going to dial this in such a way that you're going to understand how to write any kind of story that you have in your heart. At the end of the day, that's our goal, to help you get those words on the page so that you can write the story that you want to write and have it turn out to be something that you're proud of and that you want to share. So stick with us because it's only going to get better from here. We will see you next time.
Okay, very good. And don't forget that we meet every Saturday on Zoom from LiLLiPub. Come on over to LiLLiPub and you can drop off samples of your writing as you try writing these character traits. Try writing someone with a character trait in the pinnacle position and show your readers that it is in the pinnacle position. And you can post what you write, that or the story that you're working on, over in, we have a special shared area over on LiLLiPub. And on Saturdays at 1 o'clock Central, we get together for a Zoom call where we share writing and we do the gentlest and most productive criticism that you could ever imagine to help you move your story along. It's a golden opportunity and it won't always be here. So be sure to join us at LiLLiPub.org. It's not free, but it sure doesn't cost a lot. If you can afford a Starbucks coffee, you can afford LiLLiPub. Hope to see you over there. Bye-bye.
Come join us. See ya.